It's as you said. After Samuel made his offering in Bethlehem, he came to our house. And then he anointed my son David and decreed him the next king of Israel.
What a cruel joke this is. You must be laughing ┬Ż on the high, playing at war with his puppets. He sends a boy in my own image, a shepherd. I take him into my house, into my heart. I give him my daughter. How you torment me. A bloody serpent cloaked as a son, sent to steal everything I have built.
You know what needs to be done, Father. David must die.
Murder him before his wedding to our sister, with the guests gathered.
No, after, and quietly, so it does not come back to us.
Lay the blame on the Philistines.
Exactly. We have prisoners. We will bring one forth as the assassin. No one will be the wiser.
We don't know what's in David's heart. What has he done thus far but risked his life for you?
For me? Or for himself?
For himself. He means to usurp the throne.
You see him by force.
Of course.
If David was chosen, you know too well what a burden that is. Suppose he's content to wait. And when you're old, weary of the throne, you peacefully hand it over to him.
What kind of unnatural affection do you have for this man? This kingship is your birthright. How has he managed to blind you?
I'm not blind.
Samuel said torn from the throne, yes? That means blood will be spilled, yes? David's or ours?
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Behavior Revolution Scriptures, and going to be making a few changes in the text from here on out. Don't really have time right now to go back and change it from the last 2 years, but moving forward, I'm going to use the name Yahuwah in the Old Testament. Why? Because it's come to my attention that he was known as a father for a reason. Most of us, all of us, have fathers in our flesh who have let us down and brought us up the wrong way. Some might have done the best they could, some may not have, but to have a real father figure in Yahuwah is what he wanted us to have, and that's why he revealed himself as a father. So while it's not diminishing our understanding and the true revelation of the fact that Yahuwah is Yahuwah, Yahuwah is Yahusha, and Yahusha is Yahuwah, it's the same person, we know that. Just for the sake of the text, I'm going to be using Yahuwah in the older scriptures until Yahusha actually comes along. Obviously, when there's a physical manifestation, or what the text often calls an angel or a messenger, but we actually know it's Yahusha because he's actually physically wrestling or physically doing something, walking around, Melchizedek, someone like that. We know that's Yahusha, and we can point that out as we go along, as we keep going forward. So I just think that'll be easier to make that difference, and that's because Yahusha revealed himself in that way, in that order, so we should stick to it that way too. Another thing I'll be putting back into the text is the words sin and righteousness, because even though I didn't like those words in the beginning because they were religious, I was very religious back then too, so I was having a reaction to those words, obviously. Didn't want to give up my own sins, didn't want to be righteous, so I didn't want to use those words. So now that I'm coming to a bit of more sobriety, I think those words have a heaviness to them, a gravitas to them when you use them. There's no other word like them, you know. Wickedness, evil, lawlessness, criminal, all those words are true, but when you say sin, it cuts right into you and you know exactly what it's talking about. You know what you've done, So, you know. Anyway, very exciting moving on today. Still talking about King David and King Saul. We're in the kingdom books, remember? We're talking about the royal dynasty. So let's look at this today. We're going to be talking about a race later on. You'll remember in our last Keeping Up with Yahusha video, the word race came up. Christopher encouraged me to look that up, so we've done that. It's very exciting where it leads us to. But for now, let's move on in our story with King David. King Saul ignored Yahusha and was determined to rule his own way. He used his liberty as a redeemed Hebrew, even as one originally anointed by Yahusha. He used this liberty not to rule in submission and obedience to Yahusha, but independent, selfish, a power-hungry dictator, subject only to his own desires, following his own heart, and resulting in permanent separation from Yahusha. Such is the nature of the spirit of the anti-Messiah. Our enemy desires his own way, his own authority, and rejects Yahusha's. Don't forget, as we go through these kingdom books, particularly talking about King David, that David is the epitome or the shadow of Yahusha, the king, the true king. David foreshadowed all that. Saul is like the anti-king. If we're going to look at it sort of abstractly, like an anti-Messiah. So when we look at behaviours, those behaviours are still alive today. You've got Yahusha's behaviour and the anti-Yahusha, the anti-Messiah, yeah, which we can see in Saul and David. So even though Yahusha's word had paused Saul's murderous ambitions at Naioth in our last episode, all the prophesying and everything was contagious, remember? So even though Yahusha's word had paused Saul's murderous ambition at Naioth, as soon as the prophesying ended, his wickedness returned. Yahusha's words always affect us and change us, but only in as far as we're willing to give over and cooperate. How often have we had a victory only to wake up the next day and forget all about it? Like the man who looks in the mirror, then walks away and forgets what he looks like. Forgetting Yahusha, forgetting to check our thoughts, forgetting that there's a battle, forgetting to put our armor on, forgetting that there's something whispering, coming to you all the time, knocking at the door. It wants to have you. Forgetting, you gotta remember these things the minute your brain boots up of a morning, even before your eyes open. There's something there wanting to get you. And there's someone there wanting to talk to you, and relate to you, and love you, and lead you, and guide you, and have your attention on him, Yahusha. So let's go into our next chapter. Remember in our last episode, Saul threw a spear at David again, and David ran away. David ran away from Naioth in Ramah, where the prophets lived, and found Jonathan. What's his problem? What have I done to piss off your dad so much that he wants me dead? That's not true. Don't be so dramatic, Jonathan protested. You're not going to die. He would have told me if that was his intent. He always tells me everything, and he wouldn't hide something like that. Then David took an oath before John and said, I'm dead serious, John. Your dad's keeping his murderous plans from you because he knows about our friendship. I swear to you that I'm one step away from being dead as a dodo, mate. Trust me. Okay, well, what do you want me to do? Tomorrow we celebrate the New Moon Festival. I've always eaten with the king on this occasion, but tomorrow I'll hide in the field and stay there until the evening of the third day. If your dad asks where I am, tell him I asked permission to go home to Bethlehem for an annual family sacrifice. And if he says, no worries, you'll know he's chill. But if he's furious and loses his temper, you'll know he's dead set on killing me. Show me this loyalty, dear friend. I know he's your dad and all, but we made a covenant before Yahuwah. So either get back to me about this or just kill me yourself if you think I've wronged your father in some way. Get back to me or kill me yourself if you think I'm wrong. Please continue to show me kindness and don't tell the king of our plans, okay? Are you serious? Settle down. I'd never betray you, mate. If Dad's coming for you, I'll be the first to spring the news. So how will I know if your father's coming for me or not? When they reached the field, John said, I promise by Yahuwah, the Elohim of Yisrael, that by this time tomorrow, or the next day at the latest, I will talk to my father and let you know how he feels about you. If he's okay, I'll tell you. And if he's plotting to kill you, then may Yahuwah strike me down if I don't warn you, so you can escape. And I hope Yahuwah will be with you as he used to be with my dad, and that you'll treat me with the loyalty of Yahuwah's love as long as I live. But if I die, please treat my family with the same loving kindness, even when Yahuwah destroys all your enemies from the face of the earth. And Jonathan made another covenant of kindness with David, saying, let Yahuwah destroy all your enemies. And he made David reaffirm his vow of friendship again. For John loved Dave, and John loved Dave as he loved himself, and knew that he was truly the new anointed king. So these two guys have made another covenant of friendship again. You can see them here. This could be a very bitter pill for John to swallow, but he's doing it with real kindness and dignity. After all, by custom, Jonathan would automatically be the king to succeed his father. So by John surrendering the throne to David, recognizing Yahusha's will, Saul's dynasty will end before it ever really got started. This was interesting. They're talking a lot about vows and promises going on and on about it. The whole idea behind David promising not to harm Jonathan reflects a rather usual practice whereby members of the previous royal dynasty would be killed off by the new one. If a new family took over the throne, or a new outside nation to another nation took over the throne, they would kill the old family. That way, there would be no ongoing struggle for the throne by a family member of the former dynasty or his loyal supporters. So Jonathan, probably a married man, was concerned for the safety of his family once David assumed the throne. But as it turns out, he had no reason to doubt David's loyalty to the covenant of kindness, one which he followed through on later in 2 Samuel 9, looking after John's family. And we'll come to that. We see David actually honouring this vow and looking after Jonathan's family. So, David's still not sure what's going on. He doesn't know if he's being hunted or not. Jonathan said, tomorrow we celebrate the new moon festival. You will be missed when your place at the table is empty. The day after tomorrow, towards evening, go to the place where you hid before and wait there by the stone pile. I will come out and shoot 3 arrows to the side of the stone pile, as though I was shooting at a target. Then I'll send out a boy to bring the arrows back. If you hear me tell him, they're on this side, then you'll know that all is well, and there's no trouble. But if I tell him, go further out, the arrows are still way ahead of you, then it will mean that you must leave immediately, for Yahuwah is sending you away. And may Yahuwah make us both keep our promises to each other, for he has witnessed them. This simple covenant that began as friendship between friends now includes Yahusha and all the descendants of these men too. Remember when they first made a vow a couple of chapters ago? Just because they loved each other, they were good mates, they made a covenant with each other. It was just 2 men. But now this covenant involves invoking the name of Yahuwah and making vows and promises to look after each other's children, and so it goes into the descendants as well. So David hid himself in the field. As the new moon festival began. What's this new moon festival? This was supposed to be a scriptural feast, but it's a feast clearly bastardized by tradition since Saul is observing it his own way for multiple days, and not according to the instructions given to Moses, with priests, etc., etc. Yet it was treated as divine and assigned a set-apart label. Just like all the annual Mazzaroth feasts today. If you're interested in the new moon and all about the moon phases and all about what this feast was all about, you can look into that yourself. I'm a bit over talking about all that. But yeah, none of the appointed times of Moedim you were supposed to observe for 3 days in a row, like not in this context anyway. So Saul's doing another nosh up, another banquet, calling it a set-apart feast, doing what he wants. And King Saul sat down to eat at his usual place in the feast, against the wall, with John sitting opposite him and Abner beside him. But David's place was empty. Saul didn't say anything about it that day, for he thought to himself, something must have made David ceremonially unclean. You couldn't come to a feast if you were ceremonially unclean. So he just assumed David was ceremonially unclean. But when David's place was empty again the next day, Saul asked Jonathan, why hasn't the son of Jesse been here for the meal yesterday or today? Oh, Dave asked me if he could go to Bethlehem to see his family, because they're doing a sacrifice with all the relos, and his brother demanded that he be there. Sorry, we thought you knew, Dad. That's why he's not here at the king's table. That's what he says, you son of a perverse woman. And he throws an arrow at his son. See, look. And Saul boiled with rage at Jonathan. You stupid son of a bitch. The Hebrew, this is actually a Hebrew expression. In the original Hebrew, he says, you son of a perverse, rebellious woman. Now, that's not an insult to his mother. It's like saying, you dirty rat. You're not insulting rats. It's just a common term, figure of speech. So he's saying, you stupid son of a bitch. Do you think I don't know that you want him to be king in your place? Shaming yourself and your mother's womb that you came from? Again, nothing to do with his mother. It's just more about him shaming the family name. As long as that son of Jesse is still alive, you'll never be king. Now go and get him right now so I can kill him. Why should he be put to death? John asked his father. What's he done? Then Saul hurled a spear at Jonathan, intending to kill him. And at last, Jonathan realized that his father was criminally insane and wanted to kill David. The penny dropped. Then Jonathan left the table in fierce anger and refused to eat on that second day of the festival, for he was crushed by his father's shameful behaviour towards David. So, Jonathan now knows, without a doubt, what his dad's like. Then the next morning, as agreed, John went out into the field and took the young boy with him to gather his arrows. Start running now so you can find the arrows as I shoot them. So the boy ran, and John shot arrow after arrow beyond him. And when the boy had almost reached an arrow, John bellowed out, "The arrow is still way ahead of you, boy. Hurry, race ahead, and don't wait. Get out of here." So the boy quickly raced ahead and gathered up the arrows and returned to his master, suspecting nothing. But David understood the signal and got the answer he needed. Jonathan gave his bow and arrows to the boy and told him to take them back to town. And as soon as the boy was gone, David came out from hiding near the stone pile and bowed 3 times before Jonathan with his face to the ground. Then both David and Jonathan embraced, kissed and howled in anguish together. David more so, for his life would never be the same now as a hunted fugitive. And the 2 men bid each other the saddest of farewells, knowing that this was probably goodbye forever to the most loyal, close friendship one could ever imagine. Then finally John said to Dave, "Go in peace, mate. We know we'll be loyal to each other in Yahuwah's name, for he's the witness of this bond between us and our children forever. Then David left and John went to town. We spoke about this loyalty a couple of episodes ago. Spoke about the loyalty between these two men. It was a pure love, a friendship, Yahusha's love. And it's a very beautiful thing. It's not to be frowned upon. It's not to be, in this day and age, men having a relationship that's a righteous relationship, men having a friendship where they share their feelings is just unheard of. Stuff it. That's how Yahusha is. It's not to be looked down upon. It's the love of Yahusha. It should be encouraged. So these guys are really sad.
Yoab is missing. So is their Hittite friend.
We find them and we find David. Tell the men he's to be executed on sight.
No! That is not what was decided. He's to be captured alive.
Brother, you need to decide who is your family, David or our father.
Enough of this.
Let's just see who gets there first. I trust you can handle this.
I'm loyal to the king.
Good.
Your son of Judah is a traitor, and you are a traitor and a whore. I will be dealing with you.
There's no one here! Outside! Go! Go! Go!
Jonathan, the anointment was... Open the gates. Do as I say! Open them! Hey, David. Take care of her.
Thank you.
Go! Close them! They're gone. I let them go.
Perverse rebellion, my son. What you have done is treason. Treason. Arrest him. Find my daughter! Find David!
I hope you're happy.
It all seemed so unfair. All David had ever done was fight Saul's wars, defeat Saul's enemies, soothe Saul's inner demons with music, and show him the greatest respect at all times. David had no idea that Saul was actually the one who better understood the reality of the situation. This was a young boy, maybe in his early 20s. He didn't really understand the political climate that was going on. He's thrown into a battle and kills a giant, and suddenly, and he gets anointed, and suddenly he doesn't know. That was what was encouraging watching that show, the kings and prophets. You see just how confused he was a bit. He doesn't know what's going on. But Saul knew the threat. So Saul was actually the one who better understood the reality of the situation. Saul and Jonathan knew that David was destined for the throne of Israel, unless he could be stopped. David was totally unaware of the immense honour that Yahusha had put on him, and so he couldn't understand why things were going this way. Just like for Job, things that happen to us in our lives may seem torturous and inexplicable at the time, but it's always Yahusha working out his plan through us. And most of it is self-inflicted. Most of our pain is self-inflicted. because we just won't surrender and go his way in a situation. We kick and scream and get dragged down the path by Yahusha instead of actually running our race like we're supposed to. David was always crying out and screaming why to Yahusha. Why won't you do this? Why won't you avenge me? How long do I have to, how that? He was having a real honest relationship. Who's the last person we can remember who did that? Moses was like that, wasn't he? He had a real hot and heated relationship, dialogue, face to face with Yahusha. Face to face meaning honest dialogue, conversing, arguing to the point. Like, this was what David was like too. It was genuine. You see, Yahusha doesn't mind if there's an argument or a dialogue or a, not just a get stuffed, I'm not doing it. No, that's disrespectful. But I mean in a real back and forward conversation. He wants that. No matter what it is, he wants that. It's real. He wants whatever your real is, you know. So David was always crying out and screaming why to Yahusha, and despite his many flaws, he kept his love affair with Yahusha alive and was always running after his heart with a peaceful acceptance that he is actually the one in control of everything. David seemed to know that. That's why he was always crying out. He knew that Yahusha was the one in control of everything. Which brings us to this word race. Instead of being dragged down the path, because you've been put on a path, whether you like it or not, you've been put on a path. You've been immersed, you're the bride, that's the first principles. We can, you know, get over that. You're on a path. Then what? You're going to get dragged down it because Yahusha's going to make all the trees grow, all the fruit bear. He's going to make it happen. So you're going to get dragged along, or you're going to run and prove to him that you're trustworthy. Let's look at this word race. This is what we're supposed to be doing. In Hebrew, the word race means a well-trodden road. Well-trodden. A caravan. Looking a lot of caravans lately. Caravan. A manner. A path. Manner would be a behaviour. So a race implies a behaviour. A path. A rank. A rank would be like a status. A traveller. Troop. The way. Effervescing. Hot and active. A run. The trial of speed. So a race implies speed. A race, the act of the race, like the behaviour of the race, the performance of the race, whether the manner or the progress. Course, running, the web or transverse thread of cloth. Also a mixture or mongrel race, Arabia, mingled people, mixed multitude. Well, we know there's a mixed multitude. Israel, since days of old, since Abraham, was always a mixed multitude. And particularly after Yahusha died and re-raised up the blood covenant again, renewed it in his own blood, anybody is welcome to share in the blood covenant through repentance, immersion, and you're on the path. So there. Wolf. What animal makes a wolf noise? A dog. What have we all been? Dogs. So, what's the scriptural understanding? I've got a few scriptures here today. Let's dive into them. Because what is the race? Who are we racing against? Why does Yahusha use the word race? You know? Let's look at some scriptures. This is Hebrews 12. So since we're surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses, angelic and also people around us, since we're surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses, let's strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up, and let us run the race before us that Yahusha has entered us into. With endurance, run the race before us with endurance. How do we do this? By keeping our eyes on him. For he's the reigning champion who initiates and perfects our belief. It's because of the joy awaiting him that he endured the torture stake. He ran his race. Why? Because of the joy that was awaiting him. He endured See, it says here, run your race with endurance. And then it's telling us that Yahusha did because of the joy. He ran with endurance. He endured the torture stake, disregarding its shame. How shameful was it for him to appear as a lowly criminal, stripped of everything, including clothes. He disregarded that shame. And the result? Now he's seated in the place of honor beside Yahuwah's throne. Think of all the hatred and hostility he endured from sinful people. Then you won't become weary and give up. So there's another key. How do we not get weary and give up? Don't forget the hatred and hostility that he endured. He understands what you're going through, doesn't he? That's what you need. When you're going through something, he understands. After all, you haven't yet had to give up your life in your struggle against sin, have you? So get a new grip with your tired hands and strengthen your weary knees. Mark out a straight path for your feet so that those who are weak and lame will not fall but become strong. That's the beginning of Hebrews 12, and this sentence here is the end of Hebrews 12. And in the middle of it, you've got the whole section about those I love, I chastise and rebuke and flog and discipline and goad and all that. Do not despise the discipline, all that. But I didn't want to go through all that again. But you can see here that this is how you stay in the race. You keep your eyes on him. Why is it important? Let's have a look. In Proverbs 4, guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. Your heart, we think from our heart, we decide from our heart, we feel from our heart, we everything from our heart. Guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. Avoid all perverse talk. Here we go, guys. Avoid all perverse talk. Stay away from corrupt speech and keep looking straight ahead, fixing your eyes on what lies before you, marking out a straight line for your feet so you stay on the safe path. And don't get distracted to the right or the left, but keep your feet from following evil. Don't get distracted to the right or to the left. Don't get wooed and seduced off the path. Make a straight line for yourself and walk it, run it. It's a race. And even when there are temptations or tests, as we've come to learn, Yahusha is trustworthy and won't allow the temptation to be more than you can stand. He's trustworthy. He said it, he promised it. He won't make the temptation more than you can stand. So that when you're tempted, he will show you a way out so that you can endure it. So, my dear friends, flee from the worship of idols. Flee from the worship of idols. And we've talked a lot in the last few months about what modern day 21st century idolatry is. It's everywhere around us, isn't it? Idolatry is all around us. Sex, drugs, money, anything to do with all those things. Lusts of the flesh, the pride of life, position, possession, all that. In 1 Corinthians 9, don't you realize that in a race, everyone runs, but only one person gets the prize? So go hard and run to win. All athletes are disciplined in their training in order to win a prize that will fade away. Interesting point we just talked about in Hebrews 12, where it talks about being disciplined. All athletes are disciplined in their training in order to win the prize that will fade away, but we do it for an eternal crown. So I run with purpose every step. I run with purpose every step. No, I'm not just shadow boxing. I discipline my body like an athlete, training it to do what it should. Otherwise, I fear, and this is Paul talking, otherwise I fear that even after teaching this to others, I myself might be disqualified. So he's pretty humble, isn't he? He was a real religious guy, a wicked guy, a murderer, and then he became one of the best teachers Yahusha used to teach this, and yet he still says, if I don't do this, I could be teaching this to you all and still be disqualified. Not everyone who cries out to me, Master, Master, will be allowed in. Only those who are doing the desire of my master. That was in the article a couple of articles ago. So even Paul wants to make sure he's not disqualified. So we see everybody around us today and building up your body and martial arts and bodybuilding, all those sort of things. That's not really a niche hobby or a niche sport anymore. Every second man is into it, and woman. So we see everybody building up their body and sculpting their bodies, and this is exactly what this is talking about. But this is talking about behavior, because this is a behavioral race. This is a maturity. This is running a race, not a physical what your body looks like as far as an athlete goes. It's an inner thing that's going on. In Psalm 119, even here we go, David, he says, I'll run the race you lay out for me through your word, but please just show me how. Expand my heart. David had no problem crying out, saying, I don't understand. Show me how to do it. 2 Timothy 2, no one wins a race without obeying the rules. What are the rules of this race? We've got the instructions given to us, the scripture. It's got all the instructions for behavior in it. We've got the 3 rules, which are a summary of all that scripture. Don't take anything personal. Let everybody have it and don't make excuses. No one wins a race without obeying the rules, We've been talking about these things a lot lately too, when we're talking about sin. A sexual sin, remember we're supposed to be stripping off all the sins that hold us back and run our race. A sexual sin, this is, what scripture is this? This is 1 Corinthians 6. A sexual sin is different from all others because it violates the set apartness of our own bodies, which were created to become one with another in Yahusha's pattern of love. Because I was always just saying sin is sin is sin, which is sin is sin is sin, they're all the same, whatever. That's not what Paul's saying here. A sexual sin is much more important because it violates the set apartness of our own bodies, which were created to become one with another in Yahusha's pattern of love. Remember, marriage is a shadow, a pattern of Yahusha's love for us, for his bride. So that's what our bodies were created for. Not to be just shacking up with everybody left, right and center, one night stands, masturbation, all that sort of stuff. Our bodies were not created for the worldly kind of love. Our bodies were created to become one with another person in Yahusha's pattern of love. Well, didn't you realize that your body is now the temple, a set apart place of Yahusha's spirit? Don't you see that you can't live however you want, squandering the set apart property he's paid such a high price for? Your body's not your own. The physical part of you is just as important as the spiritual, and Yahusha owns the whole lot. So let people see him in the behavior of your body. So we've been through a whole lot of scriptures there. What do they all mean? What is the race? A race, by definition, implies competing and comparing progress. You say the word race, come on, I'll race you. Two people just minding their own business, someone goes, it's a race, it's on, I'll race you. It implies there's a contest, doesn't it? Suddenly you're looking at each other going, who's going to win, who's going to win, who's going to win? So a race by definition implies competing and comparing progress with others, which of course is unavoidable when in the company of other competitors. But is our struggle and our fight actually against people, or against demon powers and principalities in high places? Dodging their flaming arrows. Wear your armor. Our race is against time and the sin that wants to ensnare us. Got that? The true race, which is a clean path of behavior, the true race and the speed or status of our progress is all about keeping up with Yahusha. That's the race. Easily. I'm just seeing a vision of, those think it might be greyhounds, and they run around in a circle on the greyhound. The dogs are running around, and they have these like I don't know what they put, meat or something, a carrot in front of them, and they just have to chase it. Maybe it's a stuffed animal or something. They're just chasing this thing around. You're keeping up with Yahusha. It's a race. You don't have time to look left or the right to the competitors. You keep trying to keep up with Yahusha. His personal plan for you. Yes, he has a common goal and destination for his bride, but he achieves it very differently in each person. For only he knows how to get your attention, how to draw you, woo you, love you, corner you, get you hooked and dependent on the magnificence of his love, then very slowly withdraw himself. Remember the lover in the Song of Solomon? So that we miss him, feel his absence, and then run around mad like a love junkie, crazy person, looking for him, unable to be consoled or quieted until we find him and can rest again in his loving arms. Remember the woman in the Song of Solomon? She couldn't find the bridegroom. She ran around everywhere looking for him, off her face. Well, Yahusha does that. Obviously, he's got a plan for his whole bride, moving them to a point of perfection, but he's doing it individually with each person, because everybody is individual and needs to be trained individually, because only he knows how to affect you the way you're being affected. His ways are definitely not our ways, brothers and sisters, and if you're feeling this push and pull within you, then throw off the sin that holds you back, stopping you from hearing his wonderful voice, and run. Hearing and doing is how to keep him and catch him. This is the race. And we just hope that there are many winners. So we need to encourage and lift up those around us. Maybe even stop and double back if we're running faster, and help up someone who's stumbling so they can keep running too. Remember, we win by keeping our eyes on Yahusha and choosing his behavior, not the world. So that was fascinating. I found going through the whole thing about the race, because using the word race kind of implies you should be comparing and competing with one another, and that is what a race means. But really, the main scripture about the race declares that how do we stay in it? How do we endure this race? By keeping our eyes on Yahusha. He's the one we're chasing after. He's the one we have to keeping up with. Yeah? So keep on keeping on. Love you guys.